My wife Elena thinks I'm an idiot. She told her sister Monica exactly that last Tuesday while I was supposedly napping on the couch, but really listening through the kitchen doorway like some pathetic spy in my own house. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Vincent is just so disappointing, Elena said, her voice dripping with the kind of contempt usually reserved for expired milk. I mean, he's 40 years old and still gets excited about finding a good parking spot at Walmart. When's the last time he surprised me with anything? When's the last time he made me feel alive? I'm Vincent Hale, by the way. High school guidance counselor, amateur weekend golfer, and apparently the most boring husband in North Carolina. At least, according to my wife of 12 years, who is currently explaining to her sister Monica why our marriage had all the passion of a DMV waiting room. You deserve better, Monica replied, and I could practically hear her nodding. Monica Ward Blackstone, Elena's older sister, had never liked me. She'd made that crystal clear from day one when she'd looked me up and down at our wedding rehearsal dinner and asked Elena if she was really sure about this one. Monica had everything Elena wanted: the rich husband, the big house in the fancy neighborhood, the luxury cars, the annual trips to Europe. She was everything I wasn't: successful, wealthy, and completely convinced that Elena had married beneath her station. Remember Gavin? Elena continued. My ex from college? He's been messaging me on Facebook. Did you know he owns 3 fitness centers now? 3, and he looks exactly the same as he did 20 years ago. Gavin Moore. I remembered him all right. 6'2", square jaw, the kind of guy who probably still did push-ups every morning and posted shirtless selfies with motivational quotes. Elena had dated him for 2 years before we met, and she'd never quite let me forget that he was the one who got away. You should meet him for coffee, Monica suggested. Just as friends, of course. What Vincent doesn't know won't hurt him. That's when I stopped listening and started planning. You see, people underestimate guidance counselors. They think we're just glorified hall monitors who hand out college brochures and tell kids to follow their dreams. But what we really do is observe human behavior all day long. We watch for the signs, the lies, the manipulation, the little tells that reveal who people really are beneath their masks. And after 15 years of dealing with lying teenagers and their enabling parents, I'd gotten pretty good at spotting deception. Elena had been different lately. New clothes, new perfume, suddenly caring about her appearance again after years of yoga pants and messy buns. She'd started working late at the insurance agency where she was a senior claims adjuster, and she'd become very protective of her phone, taking it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. The signs were all there. I'd just been too trusting, too comfortable in my routine of work, dinner, Netflix, and bed to pay attention. But I was paying attention now. That night, after Elena went to sleep, I sat in my home office and really looked at our life together. The joint bank account that had been steadily draining for work lunches and client meetings, the credit card statements showing purchases at restaurants I'd never been to, lingerie I'd never seen her wear, and gas station charges across town near Gavin's gym. I pulled up our shared laptop. Elena wasn't exactly tech-savvy, and found her Facebook messages. What I read there made my hands shake with rage. I can't stop thinking about you, she'd written to Gavin just 3 days ago. Vincent is so boring. He comes home, eats dinner in front of the TV, and falls asleep by 9:30. When we make love, it's like he's going through a checklist. I feel like I'm fading inside. Gavin's response was worse. You deserve passion, Elena. You deserve to feel wanted. Remember how good we were together? That hasn't changed. I think about you all the time. There were dozens of messages, going back months. Plans to meet for lunch, complaints about me, fantasies about running away together. Elena had even sent him photos, not explicit, but intimate enough that my stomach churned. The final message was from yesterday. Monica thinks I should just do what makes me happy. Maybe she's right. Vincent will never change. He'll never be what I need. I sat back in my chair and laughed. Actually laughed out loud in the dark office because the situation was so absurd it was almost funny. Elena wanted excitement, she wanted passion, she wanted someone who would surprise her. Well, she was about to get all 3. I opened a new document on my computer and started typing. If there's one thing guidance counselors are good at, it's making detailed plans and keeping meticulous records. And if there's one thing I'd learned from dealing with entitled students and their parents for 15 years, it's that sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. Elena thought she was married to a pushover. Monica thought I was beneath their family. Gavin thought he could waltz back into my wife's life and steal what was mine. They were all about to learn that the quiet, boring guidance counselor had been paying attention all along, and Vincent Hale was done being the underdog. I spent the next 2 hours taking screenshots, copying messages, and documenting everything. Then I opened a new browser window and started researching divorce lawyers, private investigators, and the employee handbook for Elena's insurance company. By the time I went to bed, I had the beginning of a plan that would give Elena all the excitement she could handle. She wanted to feel alive. I was about to wake her up in ways she never imagined. The next morning, Elena kissed me goodbye like nothing had changed. Sweet, innocent peck on the cheek, coffee breath and vanilla perfume, the same routine we'd followed for 12 years. "Have a good day at school, honey," she said, already checking her phone. "I might be late tonight. Big client meeting." "Sure thing," I replied, buttering my toast with the same calm expression I used when catching students in lies. "Oh, which client?" She paused, just for a second, but I caught it. "Oh, you wouldn't know them. Commercial property claim. Very complicated." Elena worked in auto insurance. Had for 8 years. She'd never handled a commercial property claim in her life. After she left, I called in sick to work. First time in 3 years, and got to work on my real education. I drove to the law offices of Park, Stevens & Associates, where I met with David Park, a divorce attorney who came highly recommended by my colleague Tom Jonas. Tom had gone through a messy divorce 2 years ago, and had warned me that Elena's behavior sounded familiar. "Document everything," Park told me, reviewing the screenshots I'd printed. "Don't confront her yet. Don't let her know you know. The more evidence we have of the affair and her deception, the better your position in the divorce proceedings." "What about the money she's been spending?" I asked. "Marital assets used for an extramarital affair? That's dissipation of marital property. She'll have to pay that back." Park smiled grimly. "Keep tracking every dollar." Next stop, First National Bank, where I opened a new checking account and arranged for my paychecks to be deposited there instead of our joint account. The bank manager, a middle-aged woman named Patricia Wells, was very understanding. "Unfortunately, we see this situation more often than you'd think," she said. "You're being smart by protecting your assets." I also moved half of our savings to the new account, perfectly legal since it was marital property and I had every right to access it. Then I went home and did something I'd never done in 12 years of marriage. I searched through Elena's personal belongings. In her jewelry box, hidden under a tangle of old necklaces, I found a new phone. A cheap prepaid smartphone she'd been using to communicate with Gavin without leaving traces on our family plan. The messages on that phone were explicit enough to make me nauseous. They were planning to meet that very afternoon at the Marriott downtown. Elena had told me she'd be in client meetings until 6, but according to these messages, she'd be in room 412 with her ex-boyfriend from 2 to 4. I sat on our bed, the bed where we'd made love just last week, where she'd seemed distracted and distant, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not just anger, though there was plenty of that. Something calculating and patient. Elena thought she was so clever, sneaking around behind my back. But she'd gotten sloppy, overconfident. She'd underestimated the boring guidance counselor she'd married. That afternoon, while Elena was at the Marriott with Gavin, I paid a visit to her office. Coastal Insurance Agency was housed in a generic office building downtown, all beige carpets and fluorescent lights. I'd been there dozens of times for company parties and holiday events, so the receptionist knew me. "Hi, Mr. Hale. Here to surprise Elena?" "Something like that," I said, signing the visitor log. "Is Margaret Lemons in?" Margaret Lemons was the HR director, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd always been polite but distant at company functions. She seemed surprised to see me, but invited me into her office. "I need to report something," I said, pulling out a folder I'd prepared. "It's about Elena." I showed her the credit card statements, the mysterious phone, the evidence of Elena using company time and resources for personal matters, the long lunches that corresponded with her messages to Gavin, the fake client meetings, the pattern of deception that had been going on for months. Margaret's expression grew more serious with each document. "This is very troubling, Vincent. I'm sorry you're going through this, but I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. We take misuse of company time and resources very seriously." "I'm not trying to get her fired," I lied smoothly. "I just think she needs help. Maybe counseling through the Employee Assistance Program." "We'll look into it immediately," Margaret promised. "And Vincent, I'm truly sorry. Elena is lucky to have such a caring husband." If only she knew. That evening, Elena came home at exactly 6:15, looking flushed and guilty. She'd showered, I could smell the hotel soap, and changed clothes, but she'd missed a small hickey just below her left ear. "How was your day?" I asked, not looking up from the newspaper. "Exhausting. That client meeting ran long, and the traffic was terrible. She moved around the kitchen with nervous energy, opening cabinets and closing them without taking anything out. How was school? Oh, same old drama. Kids lying to their parents, parents lying to themselves. Amazing how people think they can get away with deception when the evidence is right there in front of everyone. Elena went very still. What do you mean? I looked up and smiled. Just teenage stuff. You know how kids are. They think they're so much smarter than the adults around them. They never realize that we've seen it all before. She relaxed slightly. Right, of course. By the way, I added casually, Margaret Lemons called this afternoon. Something about wanting to meet with you tomorrow morning. She didn't say what it was about. The color drained from Elena's face. Margaret called you. Around 3:30. Said she couldn't reach you on your work phone. I turned the page of the newspaper. I told her you were in that important client meeting. She seemed confused, said she didn't have any commercial property claims scheduled for today, but I told her she must be mistaken. Elena's hands were shaking now. I should call her back. Probably a good idea. Oh, and Elena? I looked up again, letting my smile fade just a little. You might want to put some concealer on that bruise on your neck. Looks painful. She ran to the bathroom. I heard the door slam, then the sound of frantic rummaging through her makeup bag. I went back to reading the newspaper, but I wasn't really seeing the words. I was thinking about tomorrow, when Elena's carefully constructed web of lies would start unraveling, when she'd realize that her boring, predictable husband had been 3 steps ahead of her all along. The game was just beginning, and Elena had no idea she was already losing. Elena barely slept that night. I could feel her tossing and turning beside me, getting up twice to check her phones, both the real one and the secret one she thought I didn't know about. At 6 a.m., she was already in the shower, and by 7, she was dressed in her best business suit, the navy blue one she wore to important meetings. She was trying to armor herself for whatever Margaret Lemons wanted to discuss. I might be late again tonight, she said, not quite meeting my eyes, depending on how this meeting goes. Of course, I replied, sipping my coffee. I'm sure you'll handle whatever it is with your usual creativity. She flinched at that, but didn't respond. After Elena left, I called Tom Jonas at school and told him I needed another personal day. Tom had been my friend and colleague for 8 years, and he'd been through his own marital hell, so he understood. How bad is it? He asked. Bad enough that I'm about to become the most interesting guidance counselor in North Carolina. Tom laughed grimly. Need backup? Not yet, but stay tuned. This is going to get entertaining. At 9 a.m., I drove to Gavin's gym, elite fitness center on Broad Street. It was exactly what I'd expected. All glass and chrome and motivational posters, filled with people who looked like they lived on protein shakes and Instagram likes. Gavin was easy to spot. He looked exactly the same as he had in college, which meant he was either blessed with great genes or spent more on personal maintenance than most people spent on their cars. He was leading a spinning class, barking encouragement at a room full of sweating suburbanites. I waited until the class ended, then approached him as he toweled off. Gavin Moore? He turned, and I saw the moment of recognition flicker across his face. Vincent? Elena's husband? That's right. We need to talk. His confident smile faltered slightly. I'm not sure what we have to discuss. Oh, I think you do. I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of his messages to my wife. Room 412 at the Marriott, yesterday afternoon. Ring any bells? The color drained from his perfect tan. Look, man, I don't know what you think. I think you've been screwing my wife for the past 3 months, I said calmly, loud enough that several gym members turned to look. I think you've been encouraging her to lie to me, to steal from our joint accounts to pay for your little romantic getaways, and to betray 12 years of marriage because you're having some kind of midlife crisis. Vincent, please, let's talk about this privately. Why? Elena doesn't seem to value privacy, neither do you apparently. I held up the phone again. These messages are pretty detailed, Gavin. Very graphic. I had no idea my wife was so creative with her vocabulary. A small crowd was gathering now. I recognized a few faces, parents of students I'd counseled, neighbors from across town. Perfect. You want to know the funny thing? I continued, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet gym. Elena thinks I'm boring. She tells you I'm predictable, that I never surprise her. But here's a surprise, Gavin. I know everything. Every message, every meeting, every lie she's told to cover for your pathetic attempt to recapture your youth. Gavin's face was bright red now. You're crazy. You need help. Maybe, but you know what I don't need? A wife who thinks so little of me that she'd rather sneak around with her ex-boyfriend than have an honest conversation about our marriage. I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough that he had to strain to hear me. Here's another surprise, Gavin. Elena's meeting with HR right now. They're discussing her creative use of company time and resources. Funny how those long lunches always coincided with your little rendezvous. His eyes went wide. You didn't? I absolutely did. And here's the best part. I'm not done. I smiled, the same calm smile I used when explaining to parents why their precious child was failing my class. Elena wanted excitement. She's about to get more than she bargained for. I walked away, leaving Gavin standing there in front of his audience, looking like he'd been hit by a truck. But I wasn't finished with my morning activities. I drove back to Elite Fitness an hour later, just as the lunch rush was starting. Gavin's prized possession, a cherry red Mustang convertible with vanity plates that read Gaines, was parked in his reserved spot near the front entrance. I'd brought supplies. The key I dragged along the driver's side left a satisfying scratch from headlight to taillight. The bag of flour I poured into his gas tank would ensure some interesting engine problems. And the note I left on his windshield, written in block letters on school letterhead, simply read, Surprise, VH. By the time I got home, Elena was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with her head in her hands. How did it go with Margaret? I asked cheerfully. She looked up, and I was shocked by how haggard she looked. Her perfect makeup was smeared, her hair was disheveled, and her eyes were red from crying. They suspended me, she whispered, pending a full investigation into my work activities. Someone gave them evidence that I've been using company time for personal matters. That's terrible, I said, sitting down across from her. Who would do such a thing? I don't know, she exploded. Someone's been watching me, Vincent. Someone knows about... She stopped herself, but it was too late. Knows about what, Elena? She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was trying to figure out how much I knew, how much she could still hide. Nothing, she said finally. Just work stuff. I got up and poured myself a glass of water. You know, it's funny. I was just thinking about trust today. About how marriage is supposed to be built on honesty and mutual respect. About how devastating it must be to discover that someone you love has been lying to you for months. Elena went very pale. Vincent, imagine finding out that your spouse had been sneaking around behind your back, making a fool of you, spending your money on someone else. Imagine discovering that they thought so little of you that they'd rather create elaborate deceptions than simply tell you they were unhappy. Please, it would be crushing, wouldn't it, to realize that the person you trusted most in the world had betrayed that trust so completely. I turned to look at her directly. How do you think someone would react to that kind of betrayal, Elena? She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what? For everything. For being unhappy, for making mistakes, for hurting you. Mistakes? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Elena, having an affair isn't a mistake. It's a choice. A series of choices, made over and over again. Every time you lied to me, every time you met him, every time you came home and pretended everything was normal. I never meant for it to happen. But it did happen. For months. And now you're suspended from work, your boyfriend's car is vandalized, and your marriage is over. I sat back down across from her. So here's what's going to happen next. You're going to pack a bag and go stay with Monica. You're going to give me the passwords to all your accounts. Both phones, email, social media, everything. And you're going to sign whatever papers my lawyer puts in front of you. Vincent, please, can't we talk about this? Can't we try counseling? Elena, I said gently, you've been having an affair for 3 months. You've been lying to me, stealing from me, and humiliating me. You've told your sister, your friends, and your boyfriend that I'm boring and disappointing. You've made it very clear that you don't want to be married to me. I stood up. So you won't be. She was sobbing now, ugly, desperate sobs that might have moved me a week ago. But that was before I'd read her messages, before I'd seen how little she thought of me, how easily she'd thrown away our life together. This isn't over, she said, trying to regain some composure. I have rights. I'm entitled to half of everything. You're absolutely right, I agreed. Half of everything we built together. Of course, that includes half of the debt you've created with your affair, half of the money you'll have to pay back for dissipation of marital assets, and half of the legal fees for this divorce. I smiled. I hope Gavin's worth it. As if on cue, her secret phone buzzed with a text message. She grabbed for it, but I was faster. The message was from Gavin. My car is destroyed and people are staring at me. What the hell did you tell your husband? This is crazy. I think we should cool things off for a while. I handed her the phone. It looks like your boyfriend is having second thoughts about all that excitement you two were planning. Elena read the message and started crying harder. I left her there and went to pack her bags myself. She'd wanted surprises, she'd wanted passion and excitement and drama. Well, she was getting all of that and more. But somehow I didn't think it was quite what she'd had in mind. Elena moved in with Monica that night, but not before creating a scene that had half the neighborhood watching from their windows. She screamed, she pleaded, she threatened to take me for everything I was worth. Which, given her recent spending habits, wasn't as much as it used to be. Monica arrived to help with the move, and I got my first real taste of what I was up against. Elena's sister had always looked down on me, but now she was openly hostile. "You're making a huge mistake," she told me as she loaded Elena's suitcases into her BMW. "Elena made one little error in judgment, and you're destroying your marriage over it?" "One little error?" I laughed. "Monica, she's been having an affair for 3 months. She's been lying, stealing, and humiliating me while planning to run off with her ex-boyfriend. What part of that seems little to you?" "Men cheat all the time," Monica shot back. "They have midlife crises, they make mistakes, and their wives forgive them. But the minute a woman steps out of line, suddenly she's a monster who deserves to lose everything." "Elena's not losing everything," I said calmly. "She's losing me. And apparently, that's what she wanted anyway." Monica's face twisted with disgust. "You know what your problem is, Vincent? You're small. You're petty and vindictive and small. Elena deserves better than a man who would punish her for being human." "You're right," I agreed. "She does deserve better. She deserves a man who would lie to her for months, who would encourage her to betray her marriage vows, who would run away the minute things got complicated." I gestured toward the street. "Oh wait, that's exactly what she got. How's Gavin handling all this excitement, by the way?" Elena, who had been silent during this exchange, finally spoke up. "He's scared," she admitted. "He thinks you're going to do something crazy." "Crazy? Me?" I put my hand over my heart in mock surprise. "I'm just a boring guidance counselor, remember? What could I possibly do that would scare a successful businessman like Gavin?" But even as I said it, I was already planning my next move. The following evening, I met Tom Jonas at Murphy's Tavern, our usual Friday night spot. Tom had been my friend since I'd started working at the high school, and he'd been my lifeline during the past few days of marital chaos. "So how are you holding up?" he asked, sliding a beer across the table. "Better than expected," I admitted. "Turns out being betrayed by your wife is liberating. Who knew?" Tom laughed. "I remember that feeling. The day Sarah moved out was the worst day of my life, but also, weirdly, the best. Like I could finally stop pretending everything was okay." "Exactly." I took a long drink of my beer. Elena spent months telling Gavin how boring and predictable I was. How I never surprised her, never made her feel alive. Well, I think I've been pretty surprising lately. "What did you do?" I told him about the HR complaint, the gym confrontation, the vandalized car. Tom's eyes got wider with each detail. "Jesus, Vincent, you're like a completely different person." "No," I said. "I'm the same person I've always been. I just stopped caring what Elena thought about it." That's when I saw them. Elena and Monica had just walked into Murphy's with 2 other women, Tara Sullivan and Jennifer Hayes, Elena's friends from her book club. They'd clearly been drinking already, and they were talking loudly enough that half the bar could hear them. "There he is," Monica said, pointing directly at me. "The vengeful husband." Elena looked embarrassed, but she didn't try to stop Monica as her sister marched over to our table. "Having a good time celebrating the destruction of your marriage?" Monica demanded. Tom started to stand up, but I put a hand on his arm. "It's okay." I looked up at Monica with the same calm expression I'd perfected after years of dealing with hostile parents. "Actually, we were just discussing how liberating divorce can be. Tom went through one a few years ago. Very enlightening process." "You think you're so clever," Monica continued, "getting Elena suspended from work, harassing her boyfriend, making her life miserable, but you have no idea who you're messing with." "Enlighten me." Monica leaned down, putting her hands on the table. "My husband has connections, Vincent. Lawyers, judges, politicians, people who can make your life very difficult. Elena doesn't have to settle for whatever scraps you're willing to throw her. She can take you for everything you have." I nodded thoughtfully. "That's interesting. And illegal, of course, but interesting. Are you suggesting that your husband would use his influence to corrupt the legal system in favor of his sister-in-law?" Monica's face went red. "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you that Elena has options you haven't considered. Actually, I've considered all of Elena's options quite carefully. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. In fact, I've been recording this entire conversation, just in case anyone ever wondered whether Elena's family was attempting to intimidate me or interfere with our divorce proceedings. Monica stepped back like I'd slapped her. You see, Monica, I might be a boring guidance counselor, but I'm not stupid. I know Elena's been telling you and her friends that I'm some kind of controlling monster who's punishing her for one little mistake. But here's what I know that you don't. I have evidence of everything. Every lie, every affair-related expense, every message she sent to Gavin. And now I have evidence of you threatening to corrupt the legal system to help her. I stood up, still holding the phone. So here's my suggestion. Take Elena back to your house, pour her another glass of wine, and help her figure out how she's going to rebuild her life after this divorce is finalized. Because that's what's going to happen, with or without your husband's connections. Monica was speechless, but Elena's friend Tara wasn't. You're such an asshole, she said, loud enough that the entire bar turned to look. Elena made a mistake, but at least she's not a vindictive piece of shit who would destroy someone's career over a relationship problem. Interesting perspective, I replied. Tell me, Tara, if your husband was having an affair, spending your money on another woman, and lying to you for months, how would you react? I'd try to work it out. I'd go to counseling. I wouldn't try to ruin his entire life. Really? Even if he told his girlfriend that you were boring in bed? Even if he complained to her about how disappointing you were as a wife? Even if he was planning to leave you for her? Tara's face went white. She looked at Elena, who was suddenly very interested in her shoes. Elena told you she was planning to leave me, didn't she? I continued. She told you all about how she was going to start a new life with Gavin, how she was tired of being married to someone so beneath her. But she didn't tell you that Gavin dumped her the minute things got complicated, did she? That's not... Tara started. It's not what? Not true? Elena, why don't you show Tara the text message Gavin sent you yesterday? The one where he said he wanted to cool things off for a while. Elena was crying now, and even Monica looked uncomfortable. The truth is, I said, addressing the entire group, Elena didn't make a mistake. She made a choice. She chose to have an affair. She chose to lie to me. She chose to steal from our joint accounts. She chose to humiliate me to anyone who would listen. And when I finally stood up for myself, she chose to play the victim. I looked directly at Elena. You wanted excitement, Elena. You wanted passion and drama, and someone who would make you feel alive. Well, congratulations. You got all of that. But you also got the consequences. I threw a 20 on the table for the beer and headed toward the door, but I stopped and turned back. Oh, and Monica, if your husband does try to use his connections to interfere with our divorce, I'll make sure the State Bar Association knows about it. I might be boring, but I'm very thorough when it comes to documentation. I left them there, Elena crying into her hands, while her support system slowly realized that maybe, just maybe, they'd been backing the wrong horse. Tom caught up with me in the parking lot. Holy shit, Vincent, that was incredible. That was just the warm-up, I told him. Elena and Monica think they can intimidate me into giving up. They think because I'm quiet and polite, I'm weak. And are you? Weak, I mean? I thought about that for a moment. A week ago, I might have said yes. A week ago, I was the kind of man who would have begged Elena to stay, who would have blamed himself for her affair, who would have done anything to save a marriage that was already over. But that man was gone. No, I said finally. I'm not weak. I'm just getting started. The next few days passed in a blur of legal meetings, document reviews, and strategic planning. David Park, my attorney, was impressed with the evidence I'd gathered. This is one of the most well-documented cases of marital misconduct I've ever seen, he told me. Elena's attorney is going to have a very difficult time arguing for an equal division of assets. Elena had hired Monica's lawyer, a slick downtown attorney named Richard Blackwood, who specialized in high-conflict divorces. He'd already sent us a letter demanding that I pay Elena's legal fees, provide her with temporary spousal support, and allow her to remain in the marital home. How did you respond? I asked. Park smiled. I sent him copies of her messages to Gavin, the credit card statements, and the documentation of her suspension from work. I also included a bill for her affair-related expenses and a request that she reimburse the marital estate for dissipated assets. And? He called me an hour later and asked if we'd be interested in mediation. But I wasn't interested in mediation. I was interested in justice. That weekend, I decided to pay Gavin another visit. Elite Fitness was busy on Saturday mornings, full of weekend warriors trying to work off their Friday night indulgences. Gavin's car was in the shop. Apparently, flour in the gas tank had caused some expensive engine problems, so he was driving a beat-up Honda Civic that looked ridiculous next to the BMWs and Mercedes in the parking lot. I waited until he finished teaching his morning spinning class, then followed him to the smoothie bar inside the gym. "We need to talk," I said, sliding onto the stool next to him. He looked around nervously. "Vincent, I don't think that's a good idea." "Really? Because I think it's a great idea. See, I've been thinking about our situation, and I realize there are some things you should know. Look, man, I'm sorry about everything. Elena and I, it just happened. We didn't plan it." "Oh, but you did plan it," I said, pulling out printed copies of their messages. "You planned it very carefully. Hotel rooms, restaurant reservations, weekend getaways. You even helped her figure out how to hide the expenses from me." Gavin's protein shake sat untouched on the counter. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something. Elena told you I was boring, predictable, easy to fool. She told you I'd never find out about your affair, and even if I did, I'd be too weak to do anything about it." "Vincent, she was wrong." I leaned closer. "I found out everything. Every message, every meeting, every lie she told to cover for you. And now she's suspended from work, facing a divorce that's going to cost her half of everything she has left, and dealing with the reality that her exciting new boyfriend abandoned her the minute things got complicated." "I didn't abandon her," Gavin protested weakly. "No? Then why haven't you returned her calls? Why did you tell her you wanted to cool things off? Why are you sitting here talking to me instead of comforting the woman you supposedly love?" He didn't have an answer for that. "Here's what I think happened," I continued. "I think you were bored with your life. Successful business, but no real challenges. You saw Elena's Facebook posts about our boring marriage, and you thought it would be fun to play the hero, the exciting ex-boyfriend who could show her what she was missing." Gavin's face was red, but he didn't deny it. "But you never intended to actually leave your comfortable life for her, did you? You just wanted the thrill of the affair, the ego boost of stealing another man's wife, and when I started fighting back, when Elena's life started falling apart, suddenly she wasn't fun anymore. She was complicated, messy, expensive. It's not what? Not true? Then prove it. Elena's staying with her sister, unemployed and facing a difficult divorce. She needs someone to support her, both emotionally and financially. She needs someone to stand by her while she rebuilds her life." I stood up and threw a business card on the counter. "That's my attorney's number. If you're serious about Elena, call him. Tell him you want to make a statement about your relationship. Take responsibility for your role in destroying our marriage. Put your money where your mouth was when you were encouraging her to leave me." Gavin stared at the card like it was a snake. "Or," I continued, "you can keep hiding behind your spinning classes and protein shakes, pretending that you're not responsible for the mess you helped create. Either way, Elena will know exactly what kind of man you really are." I left him there, staring at the business card and probably realizing for the first time that actions have consequences. That evening, I was at home grading papers when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Elena standing on my porch, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. "Can I come in?" she asked. "This is still your house until the divorce is final," I said, stepping aside. She walked into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch, the same couch where she used to curl up next to me during our Friday night movie marathons. "Gavin won't see me," she said without preamble. "He won't return my calls, and when I went to the gym, he had security escort me out." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you? Really?" She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Or is this exactly what you wanted?" I sat down across from her, maintaining the distance that had become necessary between us. "Elena, what I wanted was a wife who loved me enough to talk to me when she was unhappy. What I wanted was a partner who respected me enough not to lie to me for months. What I wanted was a marriage based on honesty and trust. I know I screwed up. You didn't screw up. You made deliberate choices over and over again to betray our marriage, and now you're facing the consequences of those choices?" She was crying again, but I found that I felt nothing. No urge to comfort her, no desire to make her feel better. That part of me, the part that had loved Elena Ward unconditionally for 12 years, was gone. "I lost my job," she whispered. "They fired me today. Said the investigation showed a pattern of misuse of company resources and time. I'm sorry that happened." "No, you're not. You caused it. You gave them the evidence they needed to destroy my career." "I gave them the truth," I corrected. "You destroyed your own career when you decided to use company time and resources to have an affair." She looked around the living room, at the photos of our life together, the furniture we'd picked out as newlyweds, the home we'd built over 12 years of marriage. "I don't know what to do," she said. "I don't have a job. I don't have any money of my own, and the man I thought I loved won't even talk to me. Monica says I should fight you in court, try to get as much as I can, but her lawyer says the evidence you have makes that almost impossible. What do you want me to say, Elena? I want you to tell me how to fix this. I want you to tell me what I have to do to make this right. I looked at her for a long moment, this woman who had been the center of my world for more than a decade, and felt nothing but sadness for what we'd lost. You can't fix this, I said gently. You can't undo 3 months of lies and betrayal. You can't take back the things you said about me to Gavin and your friends. You can't erase the choice you made to put another man before your husband. But I choose you now, she said desperately. I choose our marriage. Doesn't that count for something? You're not choosing me, Elena. You're choosing security. You're choosing the path of least resistance now that your exciting affair has turned into a nightmare. I stood up. But that's not love. That's just fear. She sat there for a few more minutes, crying quietly, while I went back to grading papers. Finally, she got up to leave. Vincent, she said from the doorway. Yeah? I really am sorry for all of it. I know you don't believe me, but I am. I believe you're sorry, I replied. I just don't think it matters anymore. After she left, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the back porch, looking out at the yard we'd planted together, the garden she'd tended for years, the life we'd built that she'd thrown away for a few months of excitement. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. How are you holding up? Better than I expected, I texted back. Turns out the truth really does set you free. And for the first time in months, I felt genuinely at peace. The divorce proceedings moved faster than anyone expected. Elena's attorney, the slick Richard Blackwood that Monica had recommended, quickly realized he was fighting a losing battle. Your client has no grounds for an equal division of assets, David Park told him during our first mediation session. She committed adultery, dissipated marital funds, and violated her employment contract. The evidence is overwhelming. Blackwood tried to argue that Elena deserved spousal support, that she'd been a devoted wife for 12 years and deserved consideration for her contributions to the marriage. But when Park presented the timeline of her affair alongside her work suspension and the financial evidence, even Blackwood looked uncomfortable. My client made some mistakes, he said finally, but she's entitled to start over with some financial security. Your client is entitled to exactly what she brought to the marriage, Park replied smoothly, plus half of the assets she didn't spend on her affair. After reimbursing the marital estate for dissipated funds, that comes to approximately $37,000 and her personal belongings. Elena went pale. She'd been expecting to walk away with half of everything. The house, my retirement account, the savings we'd built over 12 years of marriage. Instead, she was looking at barely enough money to rent an apartment and buy a used car. This is ridiculous, Monica interjected from the back of the room. Elena was married for 12 years. She gave up career opportunities to support Vincent's work. She deserves better than this. Park turned to look at her. Mrs. Blackstone, are you representing your sister in this proceeding? I'm here for moral support. Then I'd suggest you remain silent unless you'd like to be removed from the mediation. But Monica wasn't finished. Vincent, this is insane. You're destroying Elena's life over a mistake. Is your ego really worth ruining someone you supposedly loved? I looked at Elena, who was staring at the table, then at Monica, who was practically vibrating with righteous indignation. Monica, I said calmly, Elena didn't make a mistake. She made a choice. She chose to have an affair. She chose to lie to me for months. She chose to steal from our joint accounts to fund her relationship with another man. She chose to humiliate me to anyone who would listen. Everyone makes mistakes. If I had cheated on Elena, would you be sitting here telling her to forgive me? Would you be arguing that I deserved half of everything we owned? Or would you be telling her to take me for everything I had? Monica's mouth opened and closed without sound. That's what I thought. I turned back to Elena. You wanted excitement. You wanted passion. You wanted someone who would make you feel alive. Well, you got all of that, but you also got the consequences. Elena finally looked up. I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible choices, but does that really mean I deserve to lose everything? Elena, you're not losing everything. You're losing me, and based on your messages to Gavin, that's what you wanted anyway. The mediation ended with Elena agreeing to the settlement. She didn't have much choice. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and even her high-powered attorney couldn't find a way around it. But Monica wasn't finished with me. 2 days later, she showed up at the high school during my lunch break. The secretary, Mrs. Patterson, called to warn me that I had a visitor who seemed agitated. Monica was waiting in my office, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "We need to talk," she said the moment I walked in. "Actually, we don't. The mediation is over, the settlement is agreed upon, and the divorce will be final in 30 days. There's nothing left to discuss." "There's plenty to discuss. Like the fact that you've destroyed my sister's life because you couldn't handle her being happy with someone else." I closed the door and sat down at my desk. "Monica, Elena wasn't happy with Gavin. She was having an affair with him. There's a difference. She was trying to find herself. She was exploring what she really wanted from life. At my expense, using my money, while lying to my face every single day." Monica leaned forward, her hands on my desk. "You know what your problem is, Vincent? You're small. You're petty and vindictive, and you can't stand the thought of Elena being with someone better than you." "Better than me?" I laughed. "Monica, where is this better man? Where's Gavin now that Elena needs support? Where was he when she lost her job? When she was facing divorce proceedings? When her life was falling apart?" "He was scared. He was a coward. He wanted all the fun of an affair with none of the responsibility that comes with actually caring about someone." I stood up. Elena thought she was trading up, but she was really trading down. She went from a husband who loved her unconditionally to a man who abandoned her the minute things got difficult. Monica's face was red with anger. "You think you're so superior, don't you? You think you're the victim in all this, but you're not. You're a small, bitter man who couldn't make his wife happy." "You're right," I agreed. "I couldn't make Elena happy. But that's because Elena didn't want to be happy with me. She wanted to be happy with someone else. So I gave her what she wanted. I let her go. And destroyed her in the process. Elena destroyed herself. I just stopped enabling her." Monica stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head. "I hope you're satisfied with yourself. I hope this revenge fantasy was worth it." "It wasn't about revenge, Monica. It was about self-respect." After she left, I sat in my office for a while, thinking about everything that had happened. 3 months ago, I'd been a boring guidance counselor with a cheating wife and a failing marriage. Today, I was a single man with a clear conscience and a future that belonged entirely to me. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "The movers are coming tomorrow for my things. I won't be there. I can't handle seeing you right now." I texted back, "That's fine. I'll make sure everything is ready." Then I deleted her number from my phone. That evening, Tom Jonas stopped by with a 6-pack of beer and a congratulations card. "How does it feel?" he asked as we sat on my back porch. "Quiet," I said. "Good quiet, though, like I can finally breathe again." "Any regrets?" I thought about that. I regret that Elena felt she had to lie instead of just telling me she was unhappy. I regret that we couldn't figure out how to fix our problems before she decided to find someone else. But do I regret standing up for myself? Do I regret refusing to be a doormat? No, not for a second. Tom raised his beer. "To Vincent Hale, the most interesting guidance counselor in North Carolina." I laughed and clinked my bottle against his. "To new beginnings?" The next day, the movers came and went. Elena's belongings filled 2 trucks, 12 years of shared life reduced to furniture and boxes. I watched from the window as they loaded her car, her books, her clothes, all the things that had made our house a home. When they were gone, the house felt empty, but not hollow. It felt like a blank canvas, ready for whatever came next. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. "I heard about your divorce. I'm sorry things didn't work out with Elena. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Sarah Mitchell." Sarah Mitchell. I remembered her. She was a teacher at the elementary school, a friend of Tom's ex-wife who I'd met at a few social gatherings. Attractive, intelligent, recently divorced herself. I stared at the text for a long time, then typed back, "Thank you. I'd like that." 6 months later, I was sitting in the same restaurant where Elena used to meet Gavin, having dinner with Sarah. She was telling me about her day, about the challenges of teaching 2nd grade, about her plans for the summer. "You're a good listener," she said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "Occupational hazard," I replied. "Guidance counselors are trained to pay attention." "Is that all it is? Professional training?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't seen in years. Genuine interest, honest affection, respect. "No," I said. "That's not all it is." She smiled, and I realized that this was what Elena had been looking for all along, not excitement or drama or passion, but simple human connection. The feeling of being seen and valued and appreciated for who you really are. Elena had thrown away 12 years of marriage looking for something that was right in front of her the whole time, but her loss was my gain, and I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. Vincent, Sarah said, you looked like you were somewhere else for a minute. Just thinking about how much my life has changed in the past year? Good changes? I squeezed her hand. The best changes. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, I got one last text from Elena's old number. I saw you at Romano's tonight. With that teacher, I hope you're happy. I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it without responding. Elena had made her choice. Now, I was making mine. And for the first time in years, I was genuinely excited about what came next.